What's up, my love? Welcome back to the Big Dreamers Bible podcast. I'm your host, Tanya Jane, and today I am joined by an amazing guest. Her name is Lilia Tarawa, and she is a #1 best-selling author, a TEDx speaker with 12 million views, and a leading personal brand strategist for ambitious business owners. So, Lilia, welcome to the show.
I'm actually like mind blown to be on the show. You've been in my ear when I'm running along in the morning and I'm like, wow, I'm here having a live conversation. This is amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my God, that is so epic. I love that. I just recorded, Lilia just interviewed me on her podcast and she told me that she's been listening to the show and I was like, I feel honored to be in your ear on a daily basis. Like that is absolutely incredible. So Lilia, you have such a fascinating story. Like what you've done, what you've achieved, and what you've overcome is pretty mind-blowing. And we're going to get into it today. And then also obviously get into your zone of genius, which is all about branding. But you moved on from a religious cult at 18 and then had a seven-figure business by 23. So we're going to get into how does like one do that, but let's go back a little bit into the cult, into that experience, because I know you were brought into that world from your family at a very young age, so not really knowing much else. So I'd love to know a little bit about that, but really I'd love to know the moment that you were like, I'm done, and what made you actually decide to move on and create a life on your own terms.
Yeah, amazing. So for those who haven't heard my story, I grew up in a religious cult called Glory Vale on the west coast of New Zealand's South Island, and it was founded by my grandfather. My grandfather was an evangelical Australian pastor, preacher, and he would go into the outback in Aussie and he would preach to the Aboriginal people. He would hold baptisms and sermons in tents, and he was flying. He was also a pilot. He was in the Air Force during the war. So people loved him. They loved his charisma, and what he was teaching was really practical, and he just had a way to like draw crowds in. And so what eventually happened is he was invited over to New Zealand to a church in Cust, and he joined with that church and he was one of the pastors there. But my grandfather was a man who really, it was his way or the highway. And that eventually led to a split between him and the other church leaders. And he basically took half of the church and moved further out to Cust, around Oxford, just out of Christchurch or Tatahi for those who want a geographical location. And then his whole church started living in common. So what started this is that one day my grandfather saw people coming to church, and there was a family who drove to church in the rain, beautiful, amazing, expensive car, all their kids packed in the back, and showed up at church. And then he watched a poorer family show up to church with the wife pushing a pram in the rain, and he thought, this is not how people should be living. So he wanted to start what he called intentional community living, which was basically a way of pooling everything that you own together into one so that everyone can benefit and create a society where everyone is equal. So what happened is people started to do that. They would put all their fishing rods all together in one owned pool, and then if you wanted to go fishing, you would come and borrow from the community pool. So you stopped having possessions of your own. And they started, instead of living in homes, they built big hostels that they would live in. So families would each be assigned a room in a hostel, and you would live in this hostel with everyone. And then there was a big mess hall where you would have all of the dinner, massive big kitchen where all of the women would work and do all of the cooking and cleaning, and then it would all get served up in the mess hall. So literally every part of of life started to happen on this compound. Schooling was now moved onto this compound, so they had their own teachers who would get educated and then provide schooling for the families. Big families as well. So no birth control was allowed, very strict conservative Christian beliefs. No abortion was a sin, no birth control. So we started having massive big families. So I have 9 siblings, all from the same parents. And we started then to wear these dresses. My grandfather flew over to the States and he saw how Amish people were living. The women covered their heads and then they had dresses that covered their entire body, and he believed women should be modest, and so he designed like a blue frock which goes right down to your ankles, covers you up to your wrists, up to here, with collars and a headscarf. For some context, if you've seen The Handmaid's Tale, the costume designer used Gloria Veil as part of her inspiration for designing those costumes.
No.
Yeah. So that's the
The
type
little
of
head thing too?
costume. Yeah. So we wore like these little white caps with your hair bundled up in the back of the cap. And it was all one color. So the women wore just all dark blue, and it had like little frills like around on the bodice, and then these like sewn on belts at like, and they were sewn at a point on your waist where it was supposed to be the least sexy point on your waist. And you tied the belt behind your back. It was just one dress you put on and zipped all the way up at the back. So that was my uniform growing up. So I was born into this. I didn't join my Tawa, my grandmother, my Māori grandmother. She joined very early on when it was just getting set up, probably before the rules started getting really strict. And she basically brought her kids in. It was a better lifestyle for them. She came from a rough background. So having a place for her kids to go to school, food on the table all the time, a community to bond with, like these were all like basic necessities that she really needed. And so my grandfather, who was my mother's dad, then my mum was born, and so they grew up in this community, and I was just born into this community at the time that they were transitioning over to the west coast of New Zealand, which is a wilderness country. So it's in the Southern Alps, massive big mountains like projecting up the back of the valley, gorgeous big sparkling lakes with beech trees all around, huge big pastures and wilderness. So we grew up on the whenua, on the land, and that's what most of my memory was like. Living in these big hostels, wearing this dress, being taught very religious beliefs about women, about how I should be in the world, about the existence of God, God being a man. And this was kind of how, this was my whole life and my whole reality for the first 18 years of my life.
I don't even like know where to be. Well, I know where I want to go with this conversation, but like I can't even imagine going from that kind of a reality to what you've created today, let alone doing it so quickly and like coming from an environment like that where it was so controlling, where you don't necessarily have like free will over your thoughts or over what you decide to do. You didn't even have free will over what
No.
you can wear. So what made you start saying something's up? I don't like this. When you left, were
Yeah.
you the only one to leave, or did your whole family leave? You and the nine siblings?
Yeah, I think a really great place also for people who want to dive into this is to go and watch my TED Talk. So I have a TEDx talk called I Grew Up in a Cult. It was Heaven and Hell. You can just Google my name, and that's going to give you so much insight into the thought process behind what happened. To give you a truncated version is I saw children being very, very badly abused in this environment. I grew up myself in domestic violence. We were taught spare the rod, spoil the child. And so at the time, like smacking your children was not illegal in New Zealand. It is now, so you can't hit children, but it wasn't back then. And so I watched children getting beaten with alkathene pipes, leather belts. I was strapped myself very often with wooden objects. So, and there was one particular instance where we're at a soccer ground, and a guy who was, I think I was maybe in like the first year of high school or something, and we had a really cheeky clown of a guy in our class, and he sort of spoke back to the teacher, and this teacher just brutally attacked him, like punching him, kicking him, made him walk probably like a kilometre from the soccer field up to the main mess hall building, hitting him and beating him the entire time. And I was just like, this is not okay. Like, I grew up in a world where I'm told children need disciplining. But even as a very young person, I'm looking at it going, this is not discipline. This is an adult using a child to unleash all of their anger onto. And So I started this kind of questioning process in the back of my mind very quietly, because you can't really talk to anyone about it either. And this teacher who did this, he was back in the classroom with us the next day with absolutely no disciplinary process. And there was no reporting of what had happened to the police, because Gloriavale is so isolated, and that's one of the big things with cults. They're very isolated from the outside world. We deal with everything internally. Everything's secretive. We don't like other people involved in what's going on. So there's no normal accountability. We don't believe in getting the police involved. We don't believe in taking legal action. And each of these beliefs that you're being taught is tied into like your faith and your religion. So I was baptized when I was 10, which was the normal process for someone in a community like this. So you're expected to. But when I was very young, probably 14, one of my siblings left. Ran away in the middle of the night. I woke up just gone. And I experienced the grief of losing a family member for the first time. And I was like, oh, well, I have to shun them, because we believe Gloriavale practice shunning practices very, very common in communities like Jehovah's Witness and conservative communities. If you don't follow what we believe in the way that we've taught, exactly the way we've told you to, then you are not to have any contact with the family, you get cut off. So my sibling was 15, ran away from home, like literally clothes on the back, through paddocks, trying to get to a road so someone could take him to civilization. Same with my next sibling. 2 years later, the same thing happened. And my parents started to think, we're losing our family. Is this really what the God we believe in wants for us? And that started a questioning process. So because they were being told they had to cut off their underage children, but then one, they have a legal obligation to the point where that child is 16, but two, they just didn't feel right about it. And then I was, I believe, 17, and I decided, well, I'm going to make my church commitment, which is basically a commitment vow that we get told that we need to make. And you say, my life no longer belongs to me, and it belongs to the church. Everything I own belongs to the church. And it's supposed to be a legally binding document. There's a lot of there's a lot of legal stuff going on now around that and the implications of that. But I signed this document and I made my commitment vow. And at the time, national television was running a documentary on Gloriavale. And so they filmed my documentary as part of, or my commitment vow as part of this documentary, and did a few interviews with me and some of my friends in Gloriavale about us. And when I look back, I am like, wow, that is a completely different person. So that happened, but then I had another sibling 2 years later say, I'm leaving. And this time he went to my parents and he said, I'm leaving. Didn't run away in the middle of the night, but he told them it was going to happen. And my parents really said, okay, well, we can't do this again. So they went to the leaders and they said, our children need us. This is not what God wants for us. We want to ask permission to live in a house separate from the community, which was unheard of. Live in a house separate from the community so we can look after our children who are not now part of the community. And each day we will come back into the community and we will do our work, bring the kids to school, etc. But we will go home at night to our outside family. So now I was living in a situation where I have outside family, but I've still got all my whānau and my cousins and everyone back in Gloriavale, and I'm so torn because I don't know what's right and wrong anymore. I don't know. I'm going to Gloriavale, driving through the gate and putting the headscarf on, and then the moment I leave, I'm taking it off. So I was living this split identity of trying to understand who I was now that I've taken my vow, but now I'm living outside of the community. The reason that was able to be granted to my parents was because, well, one, my mother was the highest ranking woman in that community. She led all of the women. We called her the house mother. And my father was one of the leaders who ran one of the businesses. So he sits on what they call the board of servants and shepherds. So they had really respected positions. So when they asked for something, it was also respected. So their intention was that they would bring my siblings back to Gloriavale. And what happened was quite the opposite. We decided that we were going to leave after 18 months of living in this situation. But it wasn't an easy decision for me. My mother told me it was going to happen. They were thinking of leaving. And I said to her, if you leave, I won't come with you. So I was willing to sacrifice my entire family, my immediate family, to stay in the community because I believed I couldn't leave. I'd taken a commitment vow and I had all my friends and all the rest of my extended whānau still in Gloriavale. But one day, my very best friend in the whole world, who was a Chilean girl she was adopted and she had joined Gloriavale when I was 10, she came to me and she said, they are sending me to India to marry an Indian man and I don't want to go. And she was shaking. So she was being forced into a marriage. Again, all of the marriages are arranged inside of Gloriavale. And at that point, I put my arms around her and I was like, you have to leave. You cannot stay here any longer if this is what's going to happen. And when I gave her permission, I gave myself permission too. And because I loved her so much and I was telling her that you can do what's right for you, I realized that I'm allowed to do what's right for me too. And I went to my parents and I said, I'll leave with you. And we did. And it was a hard experience getting away too, because it's not very easy to just leave. But I've talked a lot about that in my book as well, if people want to go and hear about that.
This is it's unbelievable to me that this is a big chunk of your life. Like, I'm not exactly sure how old you are, but like nearly half of your life, like that you were in this
Yeah.
experience and to come out of this and create what you've done and specifically go into personal branding, which is basically
Yeah.
like being as unique as possible, like owning who you are, really like being as unique as possible, owning your story, owning your journey, owning
Mm,
your quirks, owning your beliefs, owning your thoughts, owning your story, like all of that is like it's such a massive like 180 from what your
yeah.
experience was. So once you left the cult, your timeline, I think I read it was 18 to 23. And in between that time
Mm,
frame, you became a seven-figure business owner. So when
mm.
you got out, what was that series of events that led so quickly in such a short amount of time at such a young age to so
Yeah.
much leadership, so much like self-confidence to even do that and belief in yourself? Like, how did that kind of unravel?
Yeah. So the interesting thing is, even though I grew up in a world where women are completely oppressed, sit down, shut up, men teach, women shouldn't be leaders, you know, I also was able to watch some very incredible leaders, and my grandfather was one of those. He's a cult leader. And so I was able to watch how he spoke and how he led and why people bought into him. And I think this is the interesting thing people don't like to acknowledge about cult leaders is that they don't feel like cult leaders. It feels like you're buying into something amazing and something incredible. And I learned a lot about leadership from him, what to do and what not to do. And also because I came from this environment where I had no power, I had no voice, I said, well, now I want to try to find my voice. So I didn't even know what I wanted to do at the time. I thought maybe I want to be a teacher, but I actually moved to Australia for a period of time, and I was working as a graphic designer for a signage company, and then I really enjoyed that. And then I came back home and I was building websites for a few clients, and then I went to study and I did visual communication at the college here, and I knew I wanted to do something creative, but the thing that really got me was the psychology lectures, and I was like, it was so interesting to me how people use campaigns and propaganda for political movements. And I was like, well, I've got a story and a voice to tell that could spark a movement as well. And I want to learn how to use that. So I actually ended up dropping out of college because what they were teaching me was I was too advanced. And I ended up teaching my fellow students how to design websites. And I'm like, I'm literally in a course where I'm teaching and helping them do things. Like, no problem, but I'm not learning anything. So I shouldn't keep myself in a place where I'm not growing. So at the time, my parents had a plumbing and drainage business. And I was like, well, I'm going to come and work in your business. And we had a general manager at the time, and his salary was quite high. And I really wanted more authority and more leadership in this business. I very much enjoyed and could see how business functioned. My mind is very strategic. I can easily identify gaps and problems and help fill those. And what happened is the Christchurch earthquakes hit. So I don't know, you may not know about it, but we had some really severe earthquakes over here and half the city fell down. So we literally just last week opened a brand new stadium, and that has been like, oh gosh, I think it's almost been like 15 years in the making. And so at this time, I'm like, okay, I'm working in my family business, and now we've got earthquakes hitting, and suddenly our growth is going to be exponential. But it wasn't working out with the general manager, and so I started to go, okay, I'm going to do a business development course. So I went and joined a business development course, and I was speaking with my business mentor, and he said one day there was this, he's like, I want you to, all students to stand in a row. And he said, right, put yourself along this timeline. This means you've made it, and this means you're just starting. And I went and I stood really close to the you're just starting line, and he took me and he said, no, you need to move up here because look at how far you've come. And he pushed me further up towards the end. And that was the first time I was like, someone believes in me. And I had been undervaluing myself. And at that period in time, we were in meetings with my parents, and I said, I want to be a shareholder. And our business mentor was like, this is a great idea. And I took the general management position and became a shareholder in that business. And we became incredibly busy. So there was so much repair work to be done around the city, and we just got really stuck in. And that was really where I cut my teeth in entrepreneurship. I acquired new contracts for us by just getting out there. And I was a young girl in a man's world. But I was sitting down in boardrooms with people who owned construction companies, and I was saying, here is what we can do for you, and here are the reasons why you should use us over everyone else, and what we are going to do better for you than what other people are doing. And I was just believing in myself and knowing that I could show up and I could pitch what I had to offer, and I could believe and trust in myself. And it was scary. I've been taught my entire life, don't speak out when men are talking to you. Men are superior to you, men are better to you. And I was like, I'm not going to buy into that anymore. I'm going to take the steps that I want to take to build this business to where I want it to be. And then we ended up getting rid of the manager. He moved on. We restructured, we call it in New Zealand, is restructuring your business. And we brought in a new QS as well, who was helping me with getting all our tenders out. And we really just rebuilt the entire business from the ground up. We were looking at all of our profit and loss. I learned everything that I know now about financial reporting and how to, like, the revenue cycles and GST filings and understanding tax filings, how to make the most of the money you're making in your business, as well as reinvesting that money into assets for your business and what that means. So I learned all of the finances stuff. So that was really how I got into that. And then I still was like, I really want to tell my story. Like, I really feel there's more for me. And so that led me to having a conversation with one of the biggest publishers in New Zealand about writing my story. And I almost said, no, I'm not going to do it. And I said to her, let me think about it. And I thought about it, and then I had a talk with an award-winning author about what that might look like for me, how I could structure that. And then I said yes, and I remember I was at a business conference because I was also now growing another business in the health industry, and I had flown up to Auckland for a conference, and my publisher came to me with a printed out book contract, and I signed my first book deal. And it was just really all go from there. I wrote the book in 4 months. While I was still working part-time, I was still doing this financial work and I still had my other business. And from there, it just kept growing and growing and growing.
It's pretty insane that you were in an industry that kind of had nothing to do with branding or personal development or even anything to do with your journey. Like it was
Yeah.
so like separate. So I'm curious to know like what made you like you have a story to tell clearly, and I don't know what the percentages of people in the planet that have gone through something similar to you, but I don't know how many of them want to like broadcast it or use it for good. And you had
Yeah.
this desire to get this story out into the world, and you even said it in the earlier phase of the podcast of like I could create a movement. Where was that coming from? Was the intention in the beginning to share your story to help others, or what was the desire for you to actually get this story out?
Yeah. A few things, and one was rage. My absolute rage at what I had seen and witnessed, how I had seen babies being beat black and blue, how I had seen high school students being brutally attacked by their teenagers, the things that had happened to me growing up, me watching my very best friend being forced into a marriage with like an international marriage. So I was like, who the fuck is going to say something about this if I don't?
Hmm.
I've seen it with my own eyes. How can I stay silent? And that was a really big one for me. I was like angry. I was angry at what we'd been through. I was angry at that there are still people living like this. And it wasn't just Gloriavale. I was seeing this across the world. I was seeing women living in oppression across the world being forced to cover when they didn't want to, being mutilated if they chose to have sex. So there was just this anger inside of me like a burning flame. And I said to myself, you have something to give the world. You can help people. And I just knew, it's like the deepest knowing in my chest that I have a story to share that's going to change millions of lives. And so I wrote my story, published it. I remember the day that it got published. I thought, no one's going to sell this. Oh my God, no one's going to sell it. No one's going to buy it. It's going to be the biggest flop. Oh my gosh. And then my publisher texted me and was like, it's flying off the shelves. Like, people love it. And I was like, oh my God, here I was thinking it was going to be a complete and utter flop. And then the emails kept coming in. Look, you're on top 3. Look, now, you're number 1 now. Like, and this is by big names like Jamie Oliver, Dr. Libby. I'm in magazines alongside people like Esther Perel, like big names in the industry. And then we're doing television shows, radio shows. We're doing huge book promotion around this. We're getting Australian TV shows coming in asking for interviews. And it just blew up. And then at that point, I had fostered and developed a business relationship with the TEDx organizers. And I was then invited to tell my story at TEDx. So I worked very closely with a speaker coach to go, well, you get 18 minutes on stage. How do you tell 27 years of life in 18 minutes? And this is where storytelling becomes an absolute art. Mm-hmm. Like, what do you have to like cut out to make the story land? What is the key point that you need to convey with this entire story? What is the core message? And how do you not say it? How do you show it through story? How do you let people come into your world? How do you let people like understand and feel and experience what you have been through? And again, that TEDx talk got posted and I'm sitting here thinking, oh my God, it's going to flop. No one's going to listen to it. And then boom, it starts taking off. We've got 3 million views. Suddenly it's hitting 6. Suddenly it's like top 5 TEDx in the world at that point in time. Like, I was like, this is crazy to me. And it was also such a hard experience because I was so young. so inexperienced. I've come out of a cult, right? And I'm having the shock of putting my story into the world and everyone having all of their opinions about it. And so from there I went, I don't want anyone to have to go through this the way that I did. I don't want anyone to feel that they are alone in dealing with what happens when you speak out and when you break silence and when you tell your story. And so that ultimately led me to create my program now, which is Bestseller Brand Academy, because I was like, no one should have to do this work alone. And I know that it's not just my story. Every single one of us has a story to tell. You have a story to tell about where you were and some, like, it was painful to you, and then you found a way to overcome it and get yourself to a point where you are today. And often with all of my storytelling in business, people will say to me, well, you've got an easy one. You left a cult, so it's easy for you. Of course you're going to get like a lot of views on that. There have been plenty of people tell their stories about leaving a cult that don't get as much views or traction or as many sales as I do. And the reason is because of the absolute mastering the craft of how to tell story in the most powerful way that people are just absorbed and consumed by it. So that is really the craft and the process that I help my clients through today.
This is amazing. I was gonna say, even when you were talking about how you wrote the book in 4 months, even that alone is like insane, just in general, let alone not having experience writing a book and also not even like being very early on in your own personal brand journey and your own storytelling journey, because storytelling is such a skill. Like this has been something that I've learned in my business is understanding how to actually explain my story and how it and everything we were kind of talking about in your podcast, right, when we were wrapping up, of like, how does my story actually tie into the brand? How does the brand and the story go together? How does that go into the offers? How does that go into my content, into my messaging? And it really is a part of everything, especially if you're going to do the personal brand route. Like your story is the leading energy of who you are and what the brand represents and why and what differentiates you from everyone else in the marketplace. It's the story. And a lot of people struggle with this for a number of reasons, but one of the main ones that I feel like so many women struggle with getting clear on what their story is and how it ties into their brand is they don't see themselves as someone who has a story to tell. They don't see like what they've done is amazing and what they've overcome. And I've had so many conversations with clients who are like, I just like don't even know how to tell my story. And I even remember learning some storytelling skills with like when I first started my business and whatnot, of how to like weave that into why I'm even teaching this offer or why I'm teaching this masterclass and why it matters and so much about it. But I remember being like, I don't really have a story. Like I remember feeling like that too, until I actually sat down and I started to look at everything I've been through and how everything I've been through connects directly to everything I ended up creating. And when I linked that, it was like mind blowing for me to not only, it like shifted so much in my content and my business model and my offers and everything else, but it also shifted a lot in my self-image of seeing myself differently through a different lens. So storytelling is not only like so important for your business and your branding, but it's also so empowering to actually look at your life and ask yourself, even if you don't have a personal brand, like, what is my story though? What is my journey? Who am I? And what have I been through? It's like such a beautiful experience to do. So I would love to ask you, I know this is your zone, so it's like for anyone who is struggling to see themselves or find their story, what are some tips that people can do to kind of look back on their journey and really start pulling out and extracting like the core experiences or the lessons? Like, is there any tips that you have on how to actually do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a module in Bestseller Brand Academy, which is called Your Irresistible Story. And inside of that module, we have a piece called Story Bank. And it's basically you sitting down with yourself for whatever amount of time it takes and listing every single thing that you have experienced or been through that qualifies you. For whatever you're doing, it qualifies you. So I did this myself. And it was, well, I left a cult at 18. That's one, right? It's just, that's one story I have to tell. But I also signed my first website client for $4,000 while I was a student. So that's another story that I have to tell. And then I also wrote my book at when I was working part-time and had a business in 4 months. So that's another story that I have to tell. But I also ran my first seven-figure business when I was 23. And I also did XYZ. And you can start to see, and any one of us can do this, and you will find that once you start listing things out, you will have more and more and more. And suddenly the idea of who you are becomes incredibly infinite. And you are thinking, oh my God, but I did this too. I left that nasty relationship. I walked away. I chose myself first. That's a story. And then, oh my gosh, but I moved overseas when I was 19 to chase my dreams. That's a story. And every single one of us have these, but we need to build it out because people think their story is one thing. And this is where I always bring it back to whakapapa, the layers of who you are. Your story is not one point in time to another point in time. Your story is an entire thing of layers that make you up into a whole being. And when we talk about vulnerability with story, what we want to try and do is like an onion, peel back each of the layers until we get to the core piece, which is the really like emotionally resonant part. So you take each of those stories and you start weaving them through your brand. It's like harakeke, which is weaving in Te Reo Māori. So we weave each of these stories into your brand. That's not just the one story, it's the 10 stories, the 20 stories, the 30 stories that you're creating. And slowly it creates this basket of what your brand is. And this brand can hold your offers, it can hold your successes and all of your ambition, it can hold your wisdom and your knowledge. And this is how we build out what a personal brand actually is.
It's so good. I love that explanation of the weaving into the basket and the basket holds the offer is like so genius. And it's so similar. It's a similar context. Obviously, storytelling isn't like a zone of mine, but I like there's a module that I call Your Story is Your Golden Ticket. And I did that module years ago. And
Yeah,
I gave my clients this exercise so similar to this of like, you got to write a brag sheet. And on your brag sheet is like all the
yeah,
wins, all the things that make it, and this is your credentials. This is why you can charge those prices. This is why you're the only one that can do this. And that's how
yeah,
the whole like, that's your it girl frequency. Like no one can do it like you. Like no one has your experience and your journey. And oh, I love this so much. I wanted to ask you a specific question now that like the land of AI is coming in and there's so much
yeah,
like going on with like ChatGPT and all of this stuff and so much is changing so quickly in AI. I personally feel like the personal brand and the storytelling is going to be even more important because it is the thing that
yeah,
differentiates you from literally everyone else. It's always been. But in a world where everyone, where AI is creating so much content and we're being bombarded with content every single day. I would love to know like your thoughts on like how you're seeing AI and personal branding and how like what this next era of business can be with like these two things without losing like the essence and the energy of like the person and the human.
yeah, absolutely. Look, I am a writer, but I'm not a purist when it comes to writing. So, like, if I write a book, I will write my book. But if I'm writing content for social media, I'm using AI to support me with that. But
Mhm.
I'm making sure that every piece that I put out is something I believe in a way that I would say it.
Yeah.
And that's really important. People often they just don't know what their voice is or what their tone of voice is or how they should speak online. So they don't know how to use AI to really help them with their storytelling because that's all it should be is a tool. It shouldn't
Mm.
do the work for you. It should be a tool for you to improve what you already have. And the power of story is that AI can't make up a story for you. Your story is already what it is. You can't go online and say I did this thing when you didn't do that thing. I mean you can, but that would be a lie.
Yeah.
It's more that your story is like so personal to you that AI can't replicate your story. It can't replicate what you've been through. because you're so unique, like a fingerprint. Every one of us has a unique fingerprint, and in the same way, each one of us has a unique story and the layers that create who we are. And all of these layers, all of these lines in the fingerprint are what makes your brand special. And that is always going to stand out, whether AI exists or whether it doesn't, because you're still a unique human being. And so that's why in this day and age, it's even more important to you to lean into that. Lean into all your stories, the things that make you special, the things that have you've been through that only you could be through, and then using AI as a tool to help you craft how you tell those stories in the world. AI can help us become better storytellers too. We still need to learn and hone our craft. So I'm not going to write every single post with AI. Like, I very much yesterday was sitting there like painstakingly typing out every single letter of a post that I want to post, because I'm not going to lose my craft. I need to know how to do it. What if AI stops tomorrow? What do I have then? I still need to be able to tell my stories and to do my work and to master my craft. But once you master the craft, it's just like painting. AI is a brush you can use, or a tool you can use in the art of the painting.
Oh, that's such a good analogy. It's so true. It's so true. I remember when ChatGPT kind of became a thing, and I was like, oh, I should probably get on board. I should probably give it a go. And I know you can like train your bot and whatnot, but I just was like, my stuff just slaps better. Like I don't know. Like my
Yeah.
ChatGPT is just not giving it. Like my stuff, like
Yeah.
my like original copy that I would put in, I was like, I like mine better actually. Like I feel like ChatGPT gets
Yeah.
better at it. Yeah, but it is like it is a tool. It is such an amazing tool, and like we get to leverage that. But I think it's like the fine line of like not losing your voice. But in order to not lose your voice, you got to know what your voice is. You got to know who you are.
Absolutely.
You got to know that, and everything you're explaining and everything you do to help people kind of find their story and what their personal brand is, it's a lot of inner work. It's like a lot of self-reflection.
Yeah.
Like you said, like sit down for as long as it takes. Like you got to like reflect on your journey, who you are, what you've done, what you've overcome. And that sometimes is not the easiest thing to do for some people, but it's so important and clearly is the foundation. If we don't have that, if we don't even know what we bring to the table, like ChatGPT definitely won't know either. So
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
one of my last questions for you is I would love to know just like, is there any mistakes that you see entrepreneurs and online business owners make when it comes to personal branding or storytelling? Is there any like, oh, there's that again, or some common mistakes or misconceptions around the concept of storytelling and personal branding?
Yeah, one of the big ones I see is that they don't want to use their name online, and they'd rather create a business name and then use that name. That's not a personal brand. Regardless of whether you have a business or not, you need a personal brand attached to the business, especially in this day and age. Like, personal brands are the new empires. So if you have a brand, that's great, but you need to build a personal brand alongside it. And then, oh my gosh, the worst thing I see is if you're using generic images and then putting text on it to like literally stock images and putting text on it and then expecting that people are going to enjoy that. Like, no. Use something off your phone, use something that's you, that's real. Like, I can't connect to a woman who's like office, like I can clearly see it's a stock image. Like, that's the biggest thing I'm seeing is people don't want to show up and be visible. And you're ambitious, right? You want to own a business. You've got all these goals and dreams and ambitions, and you want to lead in this way and spread your message in this way. If you cannot even show your face on camera, and you cannot even use your own voice to speak on social media, how do you expect to become this person? So there's a really basic thing. These are really basic things that you have to be willing to do. Like, you have to be willing to show up. Now, I'm not saying people cannot build brands with faceless social media as well, but that's another little niche and nuance that has to still be done the right way, right?
Yeah.
But I'm in personal branding, so we're really about showing up who you are online, empowering yourself with your voice and your message to tell powerful stories that get seen by your dream clients, that bring those that audience, connect with them and bring them into your world. And then the piece, which is really important, which I'm seeing lots of people not doing, is being able to sell their story. So they'll do the owning their story part, they'll do the building their story part, but they get to the selling piece and suddenly it's like, oh, well, you know, it's my story, it's so personal, I can't sell it. And it's like, you have built this brand and you see people with like hundreds of thousands of followers, but they're not actually earning money from it. Mm-hmm. They just have a lot of views and a lot of followers, which is great brand positioning. But if you cannot convert it, if you cannot turn it into what I call a prime opportunity engine, then what are you doing it for? The love? Well, that's nice, but I've got bills to pay. I've got a mortgage to pay. I've got, you know, family to feed. And I want some shiny new things too. So I think there's a bit of a, well, my story is so personal to me, and that's exactly what you were saying before. My story is so personal to me, but I can't make money from this passion, because then it wouldn't be about the love anymore. And for me, personal branding is about how can you love others fully? How can you bring others fully into their power if you cannot do that for yourself? You have to do the work first.
I could not agree more. I'm like literally I feel like I've been laughing like the whole like the last 3 minutes of like thing, because it's so true. Like I see this all the time. I see these like highly curated images and every now and then that's fine. Or like a brand that's like, who is this person? I don't know, this mystery brand. But then they're like, why are my sales so low? Or like, it's like, because no one can tell who the fuck you are. Are you even a person? Like, we don't know. Like, and something that I once got asked, like, how do you invest in your mentors? Like, how do you invest? How do you choose your mentors? And I'm like, I want to know what their life is like, because like the lifestyle is so important to me. So I'm like, if I am seeing someone with just professional headshots everywhere, I don't know who you are. I don't know if you're actually true to what you're saying. Like, yeah, everyone can make a good post and slap on like a really nice hook, but like, who are you? Who are you? I can't see you underneath this perfectly curated picture every post. So couldn't agree more. I know we have to wrap up. So Lilia, this was so good. Your story and just like your zone of genius is so powerful. And let everyone know where they can find you, hang out with you, and if there's anything coming up in your world.
Yeah, amazing. So I am on Instagram, Lilia Tarawa. I'm Lilia Tarawa on every platform. The joy of a unique name. No one has the handle. It's brilliant. So Lilia Tarawa on YouTube, TikTok and Instagram, but I'm most active on Instagram. I have a building blocks channel that's free on there. You can go join and then you can just hear me riff off to you. Every a week I'm dropping good juicy tidbits in there. And lots of tips. So yeah, I'd love to have you in my world. Make sure you jump in my DMs and say hello. I will also give you, Tanya, the links to my book and my TED Talk to pop in for the people who do want to listen to my story and read that part as well. But been amazing. Love these chats. It's been a powerful one.
Yeah, I love it. Like Lilia and we just did a podcast collab. So I am also on Lilia's podcast and we've been talking for 2 hours and honestly could keep it going, to be honest. It's so easy.
Just need a little wine or something, mate.
No, seriously. I mean, it's 5 p.m. here in LA. But thank you so much. I will add everything in the show notes so you guys can go find Lilia, go stalk her, go read her book, go listen to her TED Talk. It's amazing. And thank you so much for joining us, you guys. I will see you guys next week. Bye.